Hello, and welcome to Ending Physician Overwhelm. I'm your host, Dr. Megan Mello. I'm a family and obesity medicine physician, as well as a certified life coach for physicians. In this podcast, we talk about how the learned habits of people-pleasing, perfectionism, and a lack of boundaries show up in our lives and how they contribute to burnout, exhaustion, and overwhelm. The healthcare system is broken, my friends, but let's not wait for it to be fixed in order to feel better. Picture this. You get done with your busy day at work. You've seen all the patients, you went to the meeting, you talked with the staff, you answered the inbox questions. You drive home and pull into the driveway, open the door, and immediately there are more people talking at you. If you've struggled with this, if you walk home and immediately there's too many people at you, I just want you to know you are not broken. This is such a common scenario that people struggle with because it makes them feel like there is something wrong with them. But it's not that you don't love the people who are waiting for you at home. This could be your kid, it could be your dog, right? It could be your partner. You love them. I hope you do. The problem is that you've already spent so much time on stage. You walk into your house and there you are on stage again. If you've ever struggled with this, if this is a common thing where maybe even you struggle to get out of the car because you know that people are waiting for you, today is the day we're going to talk through this and help figure out what's going on and how to make it better, right? That's the important part. So let's think about what's actually happening. I'm going to presume that we love and care about whoever's waiting for us at home. I'm also going to assume that you generally like taking care of patients, and you know, of course, that takes peopling. It also takes interacting with staff, colleagues, right, other humans. We know that before we go into the job, so I'm going to assume at baseline that those things are relatively okay. And of course, I know all the struggles, right? It's sometimes too many people. What is the problem? The problem is that for so many of us, we are spending too much time on stage and do not have enough off-stage time in our lives. What does this mean? On stage is any piece of your life where your energy is going out, right? You are under relative performance mode in some kind of role. That might be you as physician. It might be you as leader. It might be you as parent or partner, right? Any time that you are helping to do things for other people, interacting with other people, and you need to perform to a certain degree, demonstrate a certain amount of professionalism or responsibility, right? You need to be the one in charge. That is on stage. What is offstage? Offstage is when you are able to bring energy back in. That doesn't mean quiet time while you're doing stuff for other people. It really means genuine time where there's no performance element. You might be sitting quietly and reading a book. You might be exercising of your own accord, out on a walk, resting. You might be with friends, but friends with whom there's no performance element. Maybe friends who have known you since middle school. They know all the dirty secrets, right? And they don't expect you to be on with them, right? On stage, off stage. Now, there's another layer here, which is on stage at work, right? Which is taking care of patients, interacting with staff, meetings, administration, right? All of those things, even your charting is relatively on stage because there's a certain level of performance, right? Inbox, same thing, right? We need to appear professional. We need to have that persona of, yep, I'm the physician who is responding to your request. Again, whether that's patient or staff related. On stage at home is something different. Now, if you're a parent, right, if you are a caregiver of some kind, if you're a partner, maybe you have some kind of a role in an organization. Maybe, I don't know, maybe you are involved with the PTA and you're the secretary or something. some kind of role where you're expected to show up and perform a certain way. Let's contrast that with offstage. Offstage is just you being a human. You might be a human by yourself, you might be a human with other people, but again, there's no performance element of it. You are just allowed to exist. And you're doing something that really serves no particular need other than, again, sort of filling your own cup. Again, that might be reading, it might be going out for a walk by yourself or with friends. You might be someone who's into crafting, you're making Taylor Swift style bracelets, you're knitting, right? You might be producing something, but it's just for fun. It's just for the enjoyment of doing it. You're not trying to make 15 bracelets or cupcakes for the school bake sale, right? Just for the enjoyment of doing the activity, right? And finding some restoration in it. As we go through today, I do want to highlight that you might find that you are on stage most of the time. We're actually going to walk through an audit of this, so you'll have a chance to see. But I want us to really think about this balance of time because it matters, right? It matters what energy we're putting out and what energy we're bringing in, right? We've talked about this a lot in the past. I have a past episode, it's one of the most popular, called When There's Nothing Left in Your Tank. Again, don't remember what episode that is, but you can go back and find it in the archives. It matters how we are using our energy and how we are bringing more energy back in. So this came up recently. There's two things that I was thinking about. So one is that about a year ago, one of my children got sick. Things started happening relatively quickly. We caught what was going on and we were able to engage with care. And it was going to require quite a bit of care. Suddenly, my calendar was filled with all sorts of appointments. We had to reschedule some patients on my own, right? But I was trying to sort of keep up my normal volume in clinic. And I knew very, very clearly that I was not going to have the energy to hold anything else. I was really, really mindful of that offstage time, knowing that other bits of time that had been off stage was now going to be sucked up with appointments. And of course, I wanted to be there, right? It was the right thing to do. No question about it. But I became very protective of the offstage time, such as my morning walk, right? I held that really sacred because I knew that that was going to be necessary for me to get through. And I remember being very mindful of that as I went through and really grateful for all the work that I had done to give me that awareness because that is not how I would traditionally behave. I would not have protected my offstage time. Now, contrast that with, and this is, where we go to show, we are always learning, right? We are always running into challenges again because earlier this year, I found myself struggling again without really being aware of it. I noticed that I felt pretty drained, that it didn't feel like I had any quiet time. And then when I sat back to think about it, I was like, oh, okay. Well, I had back-to-back trips. They were about a month apart. And during those trips, I had to work more before and more after. Both trips were highly social trips. And I don't regret them. Like they were great, but there were a lot of patients before and after. They were social trips, and I just happened to have a lot of meetings that were going on, sort of in between. And so there was just a lot more on stage time than I was used to. And I had been a little bit sick, and so I was struggling a little bit with the offstage time because I was not doing my normal morning exercise, which is a key part of my offstage time. And I just really found myself feeling kind of prickly and exhausted. But when I sat back and really thought about what was going on, it became very clear like, oh, hey, guess what? I haven't had much off stage time. I haven't had much time to recharge my own batteries. Well, that makes sense, right? We are always learning and looking and growing. It's part of the adventure of being human, right? But it's good for us to have that awareness, right? That even when we've done something really well in the past, it doesn't mean that we're automatically fixed, right? We still have work to do because, of course, we are always growing and learning. So let's get into what I actually want us to focus on and do, right? This is actually a doing episode. What we're going to do is to complete an audit so that you are able to see very clearly what your balance of onstage and offstage time is. Now, I'm going to put in a note here about introversion and extroversion because I think it's worth mentioning. Some of us are more introverted than others. Some of us are more extroverted. Introverts recharge their batteries in quiet ways, right? So they tend to spend more time by themselves. They might need more absolute sort of quiet solo time. And let's contrast that with extroverts. Extroverts tend to get more energy from being around other people. Now, we might think that extroverts who work as physicians and spend so much time around other people are getting their needs met at work. And if that's you, I would challenge you as we go through the audit to really think about, am I getting enough non-work social battery filling, right? Am I spending time with people that I choose to spend time with outside of work? Friends, family, partner, right? It could be anyone, or it might be a group that you are completely unrelated to, but you know that you like to be in a group, right? There are lots of physicians, oddly, who have been loving improv class, right? They probably have no native connection to anyone in the improv class, but they love being in that environment because it really allows them to interact with people in, a fun and dynamic way. I, as a more introverted person, I'm just like, ooh, no, thank you. It does not sound like my cup of tea, but that's great. That's fine. I know that about myself. And folks who are more extroverted than I am absolutely can find things that really help to fill their cup because that's what it's about, right? Offstage is about filling our cup. So, with that in mind, let's be mindful of sort of where you fall on the introvert extrovert uh, spectrum, because that's going to be relevant when we are looking at the data. So let's talk about completing an audit. Now, if you work a fairly standard schedule, I, as an outpatient clinic provider, right, I work a fairly standard schedule Monday through Friday. I don't work weekends, which is glorious. I did plenty of that in my past life. Right, so I have a fairly fixed schedule. So I really only need to look at a typical week. Somebody who has a more variable schedule. So perhaps you take overnight call. Perhaps you're a hospitalist and you're on for 7 days and off 7 days, right? You might want to look at a few weeks, right? What does your typical 7 days off look like? What does your typical 7 days on look like? I give you leave to customize, but the point is that we're not looking at our calendar for the full year. We are looking at a typical week to try and figure out what is going to be important. I want you to include as well on work time and off work time. This is important, and a lot of people will skip the off work time. But what is your off work time look like in terms of being sort of on stage or off stage, right? If you are a parent, and particularly if you have younger kids, you are on stage quite a bit. If you have older kids, if you are not a parent, right, you might have more, more offstage time, or I don't know, maybe you coach Little League or something, and so you have a lot of onstage time with your older kids, right? You want to look at that balance because it all matters when we think about how much are we enjoying our life, how much are we getting a balance of time for ourselves. So first is looking at 1 to 2 weeks, writing it out, right? You can print out a calendar and fill it in, it's kind of this is time spent in clinic, this is time spent doing this, then I have this PTA meeting, whatever it is. But we want to fill it out for an average 1 or 2 weeks. Then we're going to start to label what is on-stage time and what is off-stage time. Again, we're going to put time that is spent on charting or inbox work as on-stage time. And there's going to be some that we're going to put in the gray zone. And the gray zone is something that is off stage, perhaps, and it might feel like it's restorative, but it's actually not. This might be your social media habit, right? The time that you spend scrolling on Instagram, TikTok, whatever, where you feel like it's giving you energy because you feel called to it. But if you actually stopped, it's actually more draining than good. Now, I know it's hard to look at that. I know that it's hard to see. You might actually pull out your phone and figure out, how much time am I actually spending on social media apps? The more real you can get, the better the information, the better this activity becomes. So, I will leave you with that and I will trust you to do with it what you will. I also want us to be really honest about family time. You might love your family members dearly, but feel like that time is really on stage. You might have a family that feels much more off stage, where people are just chill, you just feel like yourself. You don't feel like you're playing a role. That is fine. But if you feel like your family time is more on stage, I want you to label it as such, right? Because again, that's going to help us when we're looking at what the balance of our time is. I think it's important that we recognize that we're all going to fit into a different place, and let's let go of any judgment that we might have. I might want my family time to feel more like offstage time, and yet I would say that's not currently how I feel. That's okay, right? I'm going to accept that about myself because it will help me to be mindful of where the offstage time needs to happen and what the overall balance is, right? I would be lying to myself and therefore not being helpful if I called that offstage time. Okay, so we've created the schedule, we've labeled it, right? On stage, off stage, or gray zone, somewhere in between. And now let's look at the ratio. I think for most of us, we might find that we are way more on stage than we are off stage. In fact, you may struggle to find any off stage time, again, particularly during certain seasons of your life. That's okay. We got to start with where we are, friends, right? If we are not honest about what is going on, then it's really hard to find something that's going to work with us, or for us, rather. So, is there offstage time? Where is it? What is it? Right? Let's be really clear. And then let's think about it. What is that balance right now? If I think back to times in the past where maybe I don't have very much on offstage time right now, but maybe I've had some in the past. Now, I don't think it's fair. Again, if you're a parent, I don't think it's fair for us to compare, well, that time before I had kids and when I was single, I used to do blah, 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 blah. I don't think that's a realistic comparison. Maybe, I don't know, we could argue about whether or not it's fair, but let's maybe think of a time when we've had, similar degree of responsibilities and maybe perhaps where we were more boundaried. What did that look like? What did that feel like? It's important to be, again, really honest with ourselves here. If we look at the balance, how does it feel? How are we doing on an average week? Are we finding ourselves cranky and drained? It's probably not enough offstage time. Somebody might not even know what their offstage time looks like who's listening, right? You're not alone if you feel that way. And again, it's really good to know because if we can recognize it, we can do something about it. If we just assume that not having any offstage time is fully normal and we don't recognize how much that might be draining us, we can't fix it, right? If we can't say out loud that we're struggling or that we're feeling burned out or depressed, we can't fix it. We'll just stay stuck in the difficult feelings, again, feeling cranky and irritable and like we're not getting our needs met. We are done with that, my friends. So yes, I recognize that it can be hard to do this. It can be hard to sit and reflect. It can be hard to look and be like, I currently don't have any offstage time, and that's a problem. But unless we recognize it and call it out, it's not going to be fixed. If you are looking at making some changes in your career, this is important to be aware of. If you are looking at, I don't know, engaging with some kind of opportunity, it might be, again, something that's in your personal life, it might be something professionally, but you realize there's no offstage time and that's important, it's a problem, then you're going to want to limit your participation in that opportunity. You might have to say no, right? It's important that we recognize where we are in that introversion extroversion spectrum, because if I'm more introverted and right now I have very little offstage time, then what I know is that I'm not getting my batteries recharged, and I probably feel that pretty intensely. If I'm more extroverted and I recognize that I'm spending a lot of time with people at work, but not as much time with people that I want to engage more with that help to fill my cup, then I want to know that so that I can intentionally put some things on the calendar and spend more time with people that I really love, people that help lift me up, right? Or in a group where I'm doing an activity, I'm really engaged and I really love the energy of the group. Small things matter, right? Some of these things that we're talking about as we do a reflection are perhaps bigger than others. Some are going to be small. But if you are looking and you think, I don't have any offstage time or I have very little, then we're going to have to start to shift things slowly, right? And make little changes, because that's actually how we get a sustainable change, right? You might look at this and think, maybe I can't stay in medicine because my current balance is unsustainable. There's no offstage time. Before we make a big decision like leaving medicine, we really ought to reflect, is there a way for me to figure out time and space to recharge my batteries more? How about I start with that? Small things can make a big difference in how we feel. And I don't say this to convince anyone to stay in medicine if they're really struggling and they think getting out is the only way. But I do think that we will not make the best decisions for ourselves when we are feeling very burnt out, very crunchy, like there is no time and space for ourselves. It is much better to do something like take a break, like take FMLA leave, right? To give yourself some time to rest and recover before we make big decisions and commitments. Now, that's a whole episode in and of itself, but I just want to mention that don't discount the impact of small changes. If we are also thinking about this work, right, we're naturally going to need to practice some boundaries, right? If you have identified that you need more offstage time and perhaps you're more introverted, right, you recognize that there are times when you need more offstage time in your week, in your month, whatever little bit that looks like, you're going to need to look and see, all right, what do I have currently? What perhaps has been helpful for me in the past in terms of onstage time? And is that stuff on my calendar? And if not, we need to get it on the calendar, right? So we know where it goes, not just a spontaneous thing when we can fit it in. And two, we need to practice the boundaries in order to make it happen, right? Because so often something like an offstage time might just kind of go out the window if someone needs something from you. And we are so good at letting other people need us all the time, not protecting our boundaries, not saying no. That's a skill we have to practice. Of course, nobody loves to do that when you are used to being available for everyone all the time, right? It is uncomfortable to do that work. But if you need more time and space, you will have to do the work to help protect it. And that is being willing to be uncomfortable. So I said what I said. So let's walk through that audit one more time, because I really want to be clear and I really want you to sit down and do this. So one is actually laying out your schedule. So look at a week if you have a fairly fixed schedule, look at 1 to 2 weeks if you have a pretty variable schedule, right? Whatever makes sense. Label the time on stage, off stage, right? Or gray zone, and see what the percentages are. All right. So take a look and see what that balance is. And then help to put it all together. Does this balance make sense to you? Do you need more of some other kind of time? Where do you fall in that introversion, extroversion, kind of spectrum? So what kind of time do you actually need? And, let's start to make some shifts to make it happen. So it's really important they actually sit down and do something like this, right? Especially if you are feeling like, I don't have time to do this. That is exactly the person who needs to sit down and really get this done. We want to be very clear about what it is that we actually need, right? So often when we're struggling with burnout, again, we just have this notion that we just want to flip the table, quit, and run away to an island. That won't actually solve the problem. It will create some other interesting problems. What we need to do is to sit and really think, what is it that I need? How am I going to get it? What are the obstacles going to be? What is important to me? What do I actually want and need for myself, right? And then we do the work of actually figuring it out. We have to be clear with ourselves. And if you've never done something like this, if you've never sat down and really looked at your time, or maybe you did it 10 years ago, maybe you did it 5 years ago, but your life is really different right now, it's time to do it again, right? Different seasons will bring different challenges. We know this, but it's always worth saying, right? What you need right now might not be the same as what you needed before, right? When my kids were very small, what my time available was and what I needed was different from what it is right now. That's okay. That's normal, right? That is just shifting, seasons, again, times in our lives. We have to think about that. Maybe you worked more or you worked less, or there's some other reason why you need more time and space. Great, no problem. Let's just recognize it now. Let's not judge against our past selves or what we think should be. Let's let that go. Let's let go of what we think we should need and think about what we actually need, right? Again, before you let this episode pass you by, I want you to pause. I want you to sit and do this. If you're on your way to work, I want you to get it on your schedule, right? I'm going to sit down and actually look, and I'm actually going to do this audit because it really makes a difference. Now, if you do this audit and you look at what you have and you're just scared, you're just like, I don't know what else to do. I don't know where to even get started. This is exactly the work that I do with people. And I want you to make a call. I want you to book a call with me so that we can talk through what we can do together to help you make some changes. This is so important. And so often we think we should be able to do all of the things on our own, but we can't always do this for ourselves, right? Or, so often we tell ourselves we're going to do it and it doesn't get done. Maybe we don't know where to start. Maybe, again, we're stuck in judgment, right? Whatever your obstacles are, bring them to a call with me and let's figure out how to get you started. None of us does this work all on our own. I certainly didn't. The people that I have trained with, the people who have supported and helped me, they didn't do it alone either. We all need people to help us do this work together, and you want to do it with someone who understands what you're going with. So the link to work with me is in the show notes, right? We can have a free initial call, no obligation. Let's sit down and take a look together and help you get unstuck. All right, my friends, that is what I have for you this week. I hope that resonates because I certainly know that if I was listening to this several years ago, I would be raising my hand right now and say, oh, yep, that's me. I need some help. I love doing this work. I love thinking about it and learning and growing myself. And I hope you'll find that you love the same. Until next time, take care. Be well.
Well, That's our show for today. Thank you as always for listening. To learn more about my coaching programs, head to www.healthierforgood.com. And if you love this podcast, please drop us a review on iTunes or support the show by clicking the link in the show notes. Until next time, take care.